I thought I disappeared a while ago. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, welcome, and thank you so much for joining me on the late one in review this Thursday night, the 3rd of June, 2021. Marisa on Instagram and Facebook. I want to thank you so much, guys, for joining. And yes, we have another week where we look at some of the news and have a discussion with my co host, Mr. Anthony Francis and Dr. David Burton. My other co-host actually is maybe in dialogue with the Prime Minister, but nevertheless, still we have a good week. But we're going to go straight at it and just get going straight for this week with Mr. Doctor and Mr. Francis. How are you guys doing?
Good evening. All good this evening.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
good to see you guys again.
Yes, yes, awesome,
Likewise.
awesome, and that's great. And I tell you, one of the interesting things is that there's so much going on. I didn't want to spend any minute because every minute makes is key thing now. We how you guys have been enjoying the sunshine?
It's beautiful. Like nice mini heat wave. There's nothing better for, people feeling great in this time of need. And I think,
Yes.
it's great. It's fantastic. We need more heat.
And Anthony,
Yeah, I've just been using this opportunity just to top up my tan, really.
top up your tan. Well, for me, I'm just walking in the park and just enjoying the birds and the sunshine and making sure I get my vitamin D. I tell the doctor, don't worry. I know I still have my tablet in there, but I still get my vitamin D, and I encourage people to get their vitamin D as well. But
And
listen,
that's a serious thing as well, going outside, in periods of time we've had lockdown and people have been indoors and really working from home and indoors, it's a really the right time to get out there and recharge the battery cells.
most definitely, and I tell you, even I think I went down to the office. I think it was Friday last week, and somebody was going off, and it was so great on the motorway. It was so great on the motorway that I had to be careful about driving and speeding and forget where the cameras were. Make sure that there's got no ticket or anything like that. Good evening, Michelle. How are you? How is it over there in the States as well? But guys, listen, David, I must say that things are looking great for the UK when it comes on to COVID, though, because I think it was the first time that they announced that there's no death relating to COVID. I don't know if that was a couple of days ago. Or I don't know if that's the same thing today because I'm not seeing any briefing. How is that?
Yeah, I mean it's been a good week, I think, in regards to the numbers of people who've been vaccinated. More than half the population in the UK now have been vaccinated with a double dose, which is a fantastic achievement.
Mm,
And long may that continue. Many more people have been vaccinated with just the one vaccine at the moment, so you can see that their time will come as well. And we're accelerating the vaccine program.
yes,
Remember, the younger persons now are eligible for the vaccine and are being called for it.
yes.
Door-to-door testing is there as well for people that require it, especially in areas where the variant is being found to be a little bit more than other areas of the country. So it's all positive news, I think, from the vaccine point of view. A little bit negativity, I guess, in regards to the travel, the affordance of travel at the moment, with Portugal being taken off the list of green countries that one could visit. But
Yes.
I think you can have a little bit of caution in that regard and know that the vaccine is working. And I think we're going in the right direction. I just think that the government is looking to be a little bit more cautious
Mm,
than people may well want them to be. The vaccine works, and I don't think there's any hesitancy from me saying that, even in the current time where there's the curiosity surrounding the I'm going to call it the Delta variant because I think they've changed names now in regards to the COVID-19. So
yeah.
the fact is that the vaccines work. It may well be a little bit less effective than the previous variants that we've had, but the fact is it works. So the vaccine program is working, and I would envisage the ability to travel in the not too distant future, especially with respect to countries that have a similar vaccination program in and around the world.
I noticed, as you mentioned, the vaccine works. We're talking about like with India with the variant, and also they're talking about naming these variants. I mean,
Right,
it's like hurricanes. In hurricanes for the Caribbean, we always have A, B, C, D.
right,
Hurricane Charlie, Hurricane Gilbert.
exactly. So I like to be fact checked, but I'm sure that the so-called Indian variant is now Delta variant. But so that's what we're calling it now, I guess, going forward because of issues regarding stigma, I guess, that can be attached to naming it after a particular country. But I mean, the fact remains that the vaccine works, and we should have a degree of positivity in that regard, and not look at the fact that Portugal's been taken off the green list as a proxy to that the vaccine's not working. It is working. We're moving in the right direction. I think as the government's probably take this hesitant kind of stance because of the fact that they want to sort of move people around the globe too quickly. But at the same time, the vaccine works.
I love to see Jamaica. Jamaica is still on the red list, I believe. If not,
I'm not sure if Jamaica is. I know that Trinidad and Tobago went onto it today. If you speak to, like, say, I've not spoken personally, but if you hear things coming out of the airline industry, they're a little bit perturbed by the fact that there are similar countries who are moving in the same footing as the UK. USA, for example, certain countries within the Caribbean, and they do feel that we should move a little bit quicker. But you can see the reason and rationale for them to want to move quicker against that of the government and advisors not wanting to move so quick. But I think it does make common sense. If we're all moving in the same boat and moving in the same direction, then I can't see it too distant on the horizon that we'll be able to sort of travel again.
Anthony, what's your take on there's this possibility and this in the air? David can always come back in where they're talking about June the 21st may not be a reality because they're sort of exercising caution.
Yeah, well, I think David's sort of hit the nail on the head. I mean, at the end of the day, I think the government probably, with other countries, doesn't want people suddenly to think that the 21st is end of the COVID pandemic, and then start to maybe lower their guard, and by default, then you start to see the spread of the virus take hold again. So I think after the problems they had in the early part of the year, with I think that they had an initiative where they gave people incentives to go out and eat. I forget what it was called, and I think people actually thought that was an unwise move at the time. So I think they've learned their lesson, and they're looking at what's happening with the data now, and they're making sure that before they provide that final say-so for the 21st, they're making sure that all of their ducks line up in a row. So I think it's the right move to take, and it's a sensible one, because let's face it, there's no way, I don't think, this country and other countries, if they can afford really to go back into another lockdown. I think people are probably tired of it, even though they put up with it, and also the economies and businesses simply can't sustain another one anyway. So I think the more we do it in a structured way, and as David has said, the vaccine's gone very well. I'm one of those recipients who have had my second jab, and I'm part of the sort of half the population who have gone that way. So long may it continue.
And they said I think the health secretary, 3/4 million. Sorry, 3/4 of the UK adults have now got the
first dose.
The first dose,
and 50% have had the double jab. And just in the spirit of facts, 18 people have passed away today from COVID-19. But the numbers are remaining, fairly consistently low for the past month, 6 weeks or so. So, and it's again, I can't explain that. This is a degree of positivity. I know people passing away is never a positive thing, but I think what's happening now is that we will find, and this is just my opinion here, that we'll come to a period where there's just a smaller number of people passing away, maybe more people contracting the disease, but not having the same effect in regards to the condition itself, i.e., even if they're admitted to hospital, the vaccine itself would afford them that level of protection.
Somebody just asked me, are you in that number? I'm always in every numbers. My answer should answer your question there. They said there was a 12,000 COVID though increase regarding the variant. If I'm not mistaken, it has gone up to 12,000.
No, 5,274 cases reported today. It is on the increase in terms of the number of cases, but as I've just alluded to there, the vaccine will afford a level of protection against passing the disease on. But the biggest and the largest determinant of how things will progress is that those people who do unfortunately pick up COVID-19, and people will pick up all kind of manner of flu viruses, etc., going through life, they won't succumb. If you've had the vaccine, you won't succumb to the same level of extent of what we call morbidity than you would have had you have had the vaccine, meaning that it won't affect you as much as it would have. So therefore, people being admitted to hospital won't have the same course, and people, unfortunately, being admitted to ICU won't have the same course. So you should find that people are less affected by COVID-19 than they would have had they not had the vaccine. And that's the point I'm trying to make here. We're going to get to a level of understanding that some people will pick this up and some people will present to the hospitals. But you remember back at the start of this, it was protecting the NHS. Well, the vaccine is going to be protecting the NHS because there's not going to be the same number of patients going into hospital for COVID-19 related problems and issues. The biggest thing now for me going forward is how we get on top of the backlog, but that's a whole different kettle of fish, and it's a whole different story. But the other conditions now need to come back to the center, the cancers, the heart attacks, the strokes, the big killers. They really need to be front and center in terms of where we position ourselves going forward.
Right. Well, moving forward, Anthony, and I just go straight over you, because this actually leaned into that Apple said they want staff back in offices by September because now things are going back to some level of normality. I sort of put it and juxtapose and just sort of give a joke to say, is the Dolios over for working from home?
Well, listen, I don't think it's over. I think certainly there's going to be a hybrid between people working from home now and actually working from the office. And I think probably the initial incentive that the government had actually edicted was actually, if you can stay at home and you can work from home, work from home. I think what Apple are now saying is those office colleagues and staff members who normally would be in the office, they now need to come back into the office. And I think, to be honest, the office itself is where the dynamism is in terms of how people engage and actually do things. And I think a lot of people are finding that their work-life balance has become blurred now because they're at home, they're in their front room, they're in their kitchens, and at the same time they're working. So they're not really having that work-life balance that they wanted because they're actually doing their work in their homes, where they've got family members around, children, husbands, wives, etc. So I think that, whereas before it was a bit of a sort of unique thing, I'm working from home today, etc. Now I think a lot of people would be quite happy to go back to the office, albeit in a hybrid situation.
Well, one of the things we were talking with our colleagues, my fellow lawyers, and we were saying this morning that this is working, and working from home is working. I mean, of course, there are hybrid cases whereby, depending on the cognitive ability of a parent or so, they'll have to go into court and judges will facilitate that. But it is working. And what the CEO, is it Tim Cook, yes, from Apple said he wants employees to return to the office by September. Workers must return to their desks for at least 3 days a week. Some staff members will be given the option to work the remaining 2 days remotely. So therefore, even though they're saying want people to get back to the office, they're actually facilitating a hybrid level of nature of working. Because without a doubt, lots of companies are saving.
Well, yeah, they are saving, but I think, let's face it, I mean, they now know that the work gets done, and they do have office spaces for office staff members who actually don't want to work from home or don't like or want to separate out that work-life balance and actually be with their colleagues and have that dynamic interaction that only comes from working from home. Yes, of course, it's nice to have the Zoom and the team meetings, and once the Zoom meeting is finished, you quickly go off into the park if you've got green space nearby to you. But I think the reality is, going forward, there will be a hybrid now because it's people have used it for a year and they've got used to it, and they've got used to the fact that they can actually now have the opportunity of avoiding going into work early and all the traffic that goes with it. Yeah. And I think companies are going to have to adapt their HR policies to accommodate people working from home.
Well, I'm just hearing some person saying on Instagram that they can't hear me. So don't worry, I'll sort that out in the meantime. Michelle Clark is saying you save a lot working from home, love working from home. David, you're not in a position to enjoy such a privilege, isn't it?
No, not particularly, but I do see the value in working from home. But I also see the cons for working from home. But I think people have really been able to adjust over the period of time. And if you made that adjustment and you're able to work productively, then it's a win-win for businesses.
Yes.
I do obviously think that there is a value to being in an office space, though. And I think purely working from home can sometimes mean that that's a little bit more challenging to sort of afford the interaction that would happen outside of just physical work, which is obviously not to be forgotten. But so I like the hybrid idea, and I think I think a lot of companies will probably look to emulate that as a standard if they can. Because having that hybrid model means that you can still have those interactions which are loosely work connected or not work connected,
Yes.
to allow the work to actually be more productive, even more productive than it currently is presently. So I think it's a fantastic thing that we as humans have always been really good at sort of finding the next step of evolution when it's required. When the back's against the wall, we find a way. We found a way with the vaccine. We found a way to work through this as well, and juggle tasks. What I will say is that the last thing I will say, was wrapping up very briefly, is there's obviously that added stress and strain that can occur with people working from home, trying to balance that with raising little ones as well, and obviously there needs to be that afforded of help and support for families to sort of allow them to do that successfully too. So that's the other thing I'll say.
I'll just touch on that as well, David, because it was also announced today that there's an individual, a lady who actually, I'm not sure if she's from a medical perspective, but she has actually raised concerns around the fact that people who work from home now are being contacted all hours of the day and night by their managers or their directors, which means again they're not having that ability to switch off, because effectively you are contactable all the time now. And I think what they're looking to do is to try and see if they can get it mandatory that people can actually switch off at a given time, like a 9 to 5 type thing. So yes, the novelty of working from home is great, and there are some real good savings, like what Michelle has said on terms of drive and and all that good stuff. And I certainly agree with that. But I think also that, as you've touched on and I've mentioned, that interaction which sparks ideas and innovative conversation, they're the things that don't happen. And they're the things that keep companies dynamic and able to actually innovate as they go on.
I tend to agree with that to a certain extent, because one of the failings, like I experience as a lawyer, because when we go to court at times, we would be able to sit down with the fellow lawyers and we have pre-hearing discussions. What is happening now, we are hardly able to do that very effectively, because we are somewhat behind these Zoom and these team meetings, and it's not very effective. It's good, but we realize that we cannot do a bit more because we are not able to have that banter there with one fellow lawyers. But it still works. And I think sometimes when I think about the judges, because they're a bit elderly, sometimes maybe they think maybe it's better for them to stay as they are all shielding. But I believe things are going to get back to some level of normality soon. But at the same time, some do work, but I believe without a doubt, people need to get back in. And as you right to say, the dynamics, because at the end of the day, we can't live in isolation. And that is what is happening. This isolation is still happening in a way, we need to get outside, because as you right to say, the footfall is so important for places in the city who are still struggling, isn't it?
Definitely so. Definitely so.
Canary Wharf and all those places.
Definitely so. I mean, the footfall may well pick up in other places, though. Remember, if you can get to the gym, for example, as a lunch break, you might not be able to do that while you're at work. Yeah. Those sort of things, it may well pick up. But I think for me, it's about the support, and I think the turning off of devices needs to be taken as a given when thinking about people positioning themselves and working from home, not answering emails at 11 o'clock at night.
Yes.
And picking up the phone at 6:30. Your work's scheduled to finish at 5, finishes at 5. Down tools and enjoy the rest of the day and enjoy it with your family.
I have no idea what is that finishing at 5.
Me neither. I'm just putting it out there. I'm thinking of Dolly Parton working 8 till 5. 8 till 5. Yeah. Okay.
Well, moving on from that, you guys have seen the news of recent days, and of course, I can invite persons in to have this interactive discussion when it comes on to Naomi Osaka, who is the number 2 Japanese. I thought she was American before. She was playing for America before, wasn't it?
No,
I don't think so.
Oh, she was playing for Haiti before.
No.
No. You name another country. Try another country.
Haiti. Was it Haiti?
Someone you're doing yourself a disservice on your geography. I'd move on.
It's always okay. Well, anyway, Naomi, I'm still behind you, Naomi, all the way regarding the mental health, and I'm supporting you. I've actually drawn the line and I'm behind her 100%. You know what I mean in regards to this. But she said she did not want to do these interviews, these post-match interviews with the press, and as a result of that, she was fined 15,000. I don't know if it was pounds or dollars. And now she said she's not going to play. The question now is regarding mental health. Isn't mental health supposed to be, when you mention the word mental health, everybody should pull back and say, hang on a second, whoa, let's deal with that because it's a subjective matter. I mean, some people are saying, like Piers Morgan, trying to get some relevance, saying that she's a spoiled brat. A few other people saying she's a spoiled brat. I don't know what you guys' views are in regards to her. I mean, she's a human being, even though she's a product, according to people.
Well, I wouldn't call her a spoiled brat. I would certainly say that there are two things here at play. The first one is that she does have a contract with the Tennis Association to actually give interviews at the end of a match. And, you know, if there was an issue that she has relating to how she feels giving those interviews in terms of any anxiety, etc., I think that what could be done for her is either she's got questions that are written or pre-recorded, or that she knows in advance when she actually comes into the studio that she can then simply answer without having to be confronted by people actually asking her questions on the spot. Yeah. And also she can maybe be given a limited amount of time once she finishes the matches and says, look, the actual time of the conference will actually only be 5 minutes. And it will only be by these 3 or 4 journalists. And again, with pre-prepared questions that maybe she knows, so she can give specific answers to the match afterwards. I mean, Naomi is now one of the most wealthiest women in the world from tennis. And she has an obligation as part of the circuit to actually give an interview after the match. And I don't think it's unreasonable to both support her and also ensure that she's able to support her obligations to the very people who have made her wealthy and successful.
David, what's your take on that?
I cannot agree more with that. The thing here is that with regards to mental health, we've got to take it seriously. There's no doubt of that. Okay, so we take it seriously. We acknowledge the fact that that there are serious connotations that can be brought in regards to people's mental health. Now, I can't speak on Naomi's mental health, but what I can say is that in regards to sort of giving interviews and things, it could be orchestrated very well for her just to give a very brief summary of the match.
Yes.
Just a brief summary of the match that she's been in, because at the end of the day, she's let that kind of mental health battle win. She's lost that mental health battle because she's not now competing on the world's greatest stage. She's not at the French Open. She's not able to show her skills and compete with the best and show that she is the best, because she's not willing to give an interview. I just think that doesn't make quite sense for me. We could have obviously just had her give her interview in a structured manner, a rehearsed manner, and then be with it. That would probably be the best way. Now, if it is that she doesn't want to perform on the world stage, then let that be your reason. Just say, look, I feel defeated, I feel tired, I feel I can't do it. But to say it's because of the interviews, that doesn't make any sense to me, because you could give that level of support. So either it is that she's got a little bit more mental fatigue and doesn't want to perform, or it's something else, and I don't get why there's something else couldn't have been taken care of.
Okay, well, let's invite James Singleton, who was graced us with his James, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Not bad, not bad. Anthony, James is one of our original geezers, all the way from Manchester. he does my hair, as you can realize. That's why there's no hair.
He's looking slick. I need to get my hair cut, James, so I'm after visit you soon.
Yeah, you're always welcome here. Always welcome here.
Then what's your take? I know you came in earlier, and we were on the Naomi issue. But before that, how was the business? How was the business with the hair business down there in Manchester?
It's calmed down a little bit now. We reopened and it was like, all hands on deck and no personal life. And now it's back to what it was like before for me. No real difference.
Yes. So what's your take on Naomi Osaka?
Well, I don't know a great deal about it. What Dr. David was saying, was made a lot of sense to me. The difficulty we have, in my opinion, is everything these days, everybody's in a protected group. Everything is a mental health issue or some issue about, people's personal rights, and everything's so upsetting. You just don't know. Did she expect to be mollycoddled? Does she have an actual issue? I just don't know. But like David said, I think if you take on a certain role within a certain industry, there are certain things that come with the terrain, and you can't really complain about what comes with it.
I think the other thing I would add onto that, Selborne, the other thing I would just simply add is Naomi is, as I mentioned earlier, one of the most successful female tennis players, and in terms of her earnings, is quite considerable. I'm just surprised that with all of the entourage, she doesn't have a proper management team that has actually, given her that support. She's had that perhaps training or issues where she's been able to deal with that, so that when she goes to these tournaments and she's asked questions, she's not in a position where she's actually been trained and she can actually answer them, even if the questions are given to her in advance, or it's a limited number of questions. But she knows there's going to be a question, and all she's being asked is, how did you feel how did you find the game? Did you win? Did you lose? How well did you play? Could you have done? But I mean, it's the usual sort of questions. We're not talking rocket science here. So to me, these aren't, and I think it's sad. I think what James has touched on with the mental health thing, I don't know her personally, and I'm not going to pass any judgments, but it does seem to be now a convenient way that everybody is using mental health as a get out of jail card for not wanting to do various things. I'm not saying this is what Naomi's doing, but I do believe with all the money and privilege that she has from her career and success to date, she could have been properly briefed, trained, and given the right support for her to at least be able to answer 2 or 3 questions on a match that she's played.
Now, you mentioned something there earlier, that with the level of entourage and the amount of money she's making, she should be able to have a management team that deal with her mental health issues. That is similar to Harry, isn't it? Many people are saying, Harry, hang on a second, you had all that mental health issues all the while. Couldn't the house, the Buckingham Palace, helped at the same time? I mean, I'm not an expert in this particular area, but it makes you wonder at the same time. Isn't it very subjective at the same time? I mean, and I know you said she should be, but we don't know, isn't it?
No, well, can I say something? Because what I think he was getting at was she could be prepared for it, as opposed to handling her mental health issues. Because, I don't know. At the end of the day, what seems to be subjective is how mental health issues are dealt with. But with regards to being able to prepare somebody to at least function in a certain part of their role is a separate thing to the mental health thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And also, just as an aside, James, and maybe David, you can just comment on this. If Naomi really is struggling badly with anxiety in front of the media, as she's rightly done, maybe just simply, take a step back from the game and use the resources that are at her disposal to actually deal with that in a more private setting, whereby when she comes back, maybe towards the end of the year or next year, she's able to deal with that in a more strong fashion. And also for the organisers to make sure that they support her in a way that allows her to not feel so under pressure. So I'm pretty sure there are ways of doing so, because let's face it, she's just played a really tough match.
Yes.
And straight afterwards, they're asking her to answer 3 or 4 questions.
And I think that's the latter that we're talking about here. So looking back at a statement, it says, and I quote, "I've often felt that people have no regard for athletes' mental health, and this rings true whenever I see a press conference or partake in one. We are often sat there and ask questions that have been asked multiple times before, or ask questions that bring doubt into our minds, and I'm just not going to subject myself to people that doubt me." So she's saying there that she doesn't want to take questions, particularly I think from what I read there, and this is from the Guardian, take that she doesn't want to take questions, especially when she's losing. I take it, and I think part of sport is that you win and you lose. It's not an expectation that you're going to win every single time, but I can see that if you feel mentally fatigued, those low points are going to feel a little bit more low.
Yes.
But what she needs is that support that I talked about earlier, the support to try and get through the tough times. I'm not a top sportsman, but I do a job that comes with the territory is stressful. Being a doctor, and I'm not saying I've got to compare myself to Naomi Osaka, because we're all different people. But at the end of the day, levels and jobs have stress, and it's how you deal with that, and you try and find ways to deal with it. And you know, I get it. She's at the top of the stage. People are always looking at her in a particular manner of expectation, and when that expectation doesn't come, then the media can quite easily be there to try and pull you down a little bit.
Yeah.
But there's got to be that support that's afforded to her. And I take your point there, Anthony. Like, I don't understand why it is that the people that are around her haven't given her that support. And maybe they have. Maybe I'm doing them a disservice. But she needs that support. She needs that help. And it's not her first kind of rodeo. She's been on the scene for a long time now. So that's my bottom line, is that the support needs to come with the territory. And actually, you know, that support can come from the French Open as well. There's got to be, you know, multiple areas of ways of means to try and offer you that support.
One of Lewis Hamilton backs her, and Lewis Hamilton said, "We are pushing ourselves to the limit as athletes. We're on the edge, and we're only human beings," says F1 7-time champion, as he gave his support to Naomi Osaka withdrawing from the French Open, believing athletes need more support. So I guess it seemed to be the support which is needed for athletes, because, I mean, as you rightly say, they're making a ton of money, man.
I if you don't mind me interjecting here,
Yes, please.
there's another way, though, also of looking at this, because in my personal opinion, the thing that's subjective here is how much pressure a person is or is not subjected to, because there are the pressures that come with being an athlete or being some sort of celebrity, right? But there are also the benefits as well that go with that, the access that they have to the very best of everything, be it support, be it finances, whatever it is. And then so, you know, we all are subjected to these extreme pressures. I mean, imagine and my life is not particularly any more significant than anybody else's, but I have other people's livelihoods that I'm responsible for. I went through a breakup during lockdown. I've got family issues. You know, I have people around me that are ill, and I could lose them at some point in the very near future. And I have all of these things. What I don't do, meanwhile, is go around telling people that, well, because I have these pressures in my life, I can't really function correctly in my job, and you actually need to make allowances for what I may or may not like.
Yes.
And like we're not all experiencing the same thing. And it's not to make nothing of what she's saying or Lewis Hamilton, but at the same time, it's like, your life isn't any more pressurized than anybody else's. Try being a single parent of multiple children, you know, and at that point, when it's like, oh, but us athletes, it's so difficult, I really lose sympathy, because, you know, I mean, like I say, a single mother, for example, there's no harder job in the world than raising children, and the pressures and the worries. And look at the video you posted earlier, Silburn. There is a mother out there whose child was chased across a park and beaten by a gang of lads. Or there's another mother whose child is chasing another child across a park and is going to end up in prison for years of his life or something. You know, I have little or no sympathy for somebody because they're a celebrity, because that does not make their life any more difficult than anybody else's. I disagree.
I think the one thing I'd just interject on that, Selwyn and James,
yes,
which is what I find a little bit maybe slightly humorous here as well, is, and I think Michelle's touched on it, and I think I mentioned before with the Venus statement, where Venus Williams made the point that actually, you know, all these questions that she's asked by these journalists, she knows that none of them are as good a tennis player as her, so you know they wouldn't light a candle next to her. Yeah. So for me, at the end of the day, Naomi, like Lewis Hamilton, they're going to be asked the same questions. It's a bit like a football match. I can actually tell you what the answer would be to any question a football manager will be asked at the end of the game, because I know what the questions are going to be. I know. Now, the same thing is probably the same in tennis or in Formula One. Lewis is going to be asked, Lewis, how did you race that particular race this afternoon? You know, could you have caught Verstappen? Could you have done this better? He's going to give the same answers, right? Roughly. It's, you know, it's almost like it's a rehearsed. He's not going to be, as James has said, this isn't life or death. This is knocking a ball over a net.
You know, it is similar to when Usain Bolt and the Jamaican athletes win their races. They always pull them to one side and ask the same question. And I do recall the Jamaican athletes always say, well, it was before me and I executed. They always use those terms. They executed accordingly. And you can see that they're trained and they're groomed, because at the end of the day, that's a part of the whole process. So, but the point that James said and everybody's saying is that, hey, when you really compare their lives to that single mother, to that child who's running across the field with guys running after him to stab him, come on, man. These guys that's nothing.
Exactly.
You know, that's nothing. So, I mean, so what's your advice, David, to Naomi? If she's listening?
Take heed and listen to Venus Williams and get the support that you need.
Right.
That's one way of just fighting fire with fire.
Yes. And James, your advice to Naomi?
Well, part of it is I was raised very much a sort of, you know, pick yourself up and wipe yourself down, stop crying about it. But also, like David said, fight fire with fire. They come out with a stupid question and just say, okay, well, could you do it? Right? No, shut up then.
I do recall Serena or Venus once went to one of these press conference and said, I'm just here because they said I have to be here. I don't really want to be here.
Exactly.
She was like, I'm just here.
Exactly. You know, try and be the cause of the situation. At the end of the day, you're the important person in the room. The others, their job is simply to ask you questions as the important person in the room. Act like it. Maybe we should watch videos on how the Queen conducts herself, because she always knows she's the important person in the room.
Yeah, you're right about that. Anthony, last word to Naomi? Even though I know your daughter's name is Naomi at the same time as well.
Yeah, well, my last words will be, you got plenty of cash. Get the support around you and make sure that you actually are prepared for the questions and just get on with it.
Yes, most definitely. Okay, moving on from that. Guys, you may have seen, and James, you alluded to it a while ago, this incident in Hyde Park where these guys running after this bloke. And running after this bloke with this sword, samurai, cutlass, or lass, as they say in Jamaica. But the guy that they're running after, he also had one in his hands. And I'm not going to play the video. I definitely won't play the video. But what I'm going to do is show you an image. And this image is very, very, very disturbing. And here's the video. Here's the image here. Bingo. Look at that. What is that in his hands?
Oh, I can't see it.
Yeah? It is right there. There's a big lasso or so in his hands. I'm not going to show the video. Definitely not. Okay. It's a bit very disturbing. What's the solution, guys? I mean, there are a lot of persons working in the background with knife crime, and it seems like it is raising its head again in the summer period. Children want to go to the park, hang out with their friends. Parents are scared because of what is happening in society, and it's a pandemic, according to some. David, what's your take on? I don't know if you saw the video.
Yeah, so I've seen the video. Knife crime has existed since day dot. I'm not going to belittle it, but I do think it's been around for a long period of time. I think it gains traction when it becomes more visible, and I think that's been afforded to us because of social media and the fact that we have mobile phones. But if you look back, an interesting stat today from the BBC, if you look back through the past 10, 15 years, knife crime numbers are pretty much equivalent. So it's a few hundreds between them, but the fact is knife crime has been going on for a long period of time. And I think because it's more visible, because it's occurring with the ability for us to see it, then it becomes more or less palatable because we can see it. Out of sight, out of mind. There are knife crimes existing as we talk and will not be reported on because they'll be in different parts of the UK. But the seriousness of this particular thing is that there's a disproportionate number of black people who have been caught up in knife crime, and I think that gains attraction through media outlets as well, because it's a story, and it's more than a story, because obviously it's affecting lives of individuals. But we have to remember, this isn't just a black problem. It's affecting all stretches of society. If you look on the BBC, 2019. They give you the first 100 people, unfortunately, from 2019 who passed away because of knife crime. And you can fact check on this. Out of the 100 people, 55 people were white, and so 45 people were of non-white persuasion. So you can see there that it's not just a black problem. But what you see now is that you'll have videos that will be posted. You'll see that obviously is an effect on our society. And the thing with this particular incident is that it occurred right in the middle of a public park. What was very interesting is that people didn't generally seem to be in fear of what was going on. They were screaming. I get that, but you can see it was isolated to a bunch of individuals, which shouldn't occur at all. Right, because knife crime should not occur. I think we don't have a long enough program to talk about knife crime and how we solve the particular problem, but I'll say a couple of things, and I'll let my co-host talk on the topic as well. I think we have to find a better way of identifying people who are carrying knives. As I said to you before, this isn't just a 2021 problem. This has been going on since day dot. I don't think throwing money at people is going to solve the solution. Going to be a solution, but we've got to find a better way of identifying people. And we'll probably touch on stop and search. I have reservations about stop and search, and so that's why I would have a better way of trying to figure out whether somebody is carrying a knife, is carrying out a weapon. There's got to be a better way of doing that. Apart from that, stopping at source is obviously the way forward. And stopping at source obviously means educating the public, making sure that kids are aware that knife crime is not the way forward, and helping out from a social point of view those areas and people who are affected through knife crime. Whether that we've touched on this before, we touched on youth clubs, we touched on community centres. I will say this though: knife crime has existed even with those things, and the support afforded to people in the community. So as I said to you before, if people are going to pick up a knife, which I do not condone, we've got to find a way of identifying those people to a better extent than we're currently doing, so we can get them off the streets. Now, you might have a point of argument and say, well, people will pick up another knife, but I do think by stopping people who've got the object on the offending object, it will stop the effect as well going down the line. But there's more to it than that. That's just my flavor on things.
Yeah. James or Anthony, you want to take it?
I always have an opinion, so I'll let Anthony speak.
James, I'm like you. I've got an opinion as well, but I'll kick off. Well, look, for me, as David has said, this has been going on for a while. Clearly, the police have useful intel because they've been doing the Trident, which has been the force that's been looking on black crime for some years now. So, I'm pretty sure they must have some data that will enable them to sort of know where some of these things are originating from and what has been some of the key causes. Yes, we know they're going to be socioeconomic, but, there may be some other areas that they've learned from their insight from dealing with the many years they've had experience of Trident being around.
Yes.
So, as David has said, I sadly, because of mobile media now and people having access to be able to share this information, it does give the impression that, as Michelle is saying, that there are butchers knocking around everywhere. On the contrary, they're not, but it gets publicized in this way. So it creates this false narrative that, all people are doing around the UK is going around killing people. That, clearly we don't have a situation like in the US, where people are being gunned down left, right, and centre. We have isolated incidents that get magnified when they do happen here. And sadly, the incident across Hyde Park the other day was really given more reference than it would do normally because it was videoed. So I think, as David has said, it's been going on for a while. It's a complicated matter, but I don't think if we were to look at the stats of other killings in the UK, in terms of what the causes were, you might find that there are sadly, other incidences that are more prevalent than knife crime. That's not to say I don't think it's important to address it. I just feel that, you know, in the scheme of things, if you look at the ratio of killings and the use of knives, it is relatively small in comparison to other areas. And as I said, the lessons learned from the Trident force should be taken into consideration when determining what sort of support mechanism should be put out there.
Before you come on, James, let me show you guys something here. Let me just show you guys something here. This is something which I got not so long ago, and I'm just gonna play it for a bit because this is another issue, another one. And just take me 1 second. I'll just put you on mute for a moment there, because let me just give me 1 moment. Here we go. That was another one. That was another one. Just saw that today as well. And what they're actually saying is, and I spoke to an ex-gangster last night because I was in some discussions about it. And there's a lot of guys that are out there who are trying to sort out the problem. But it's like many people are doing different things. And while it may seem a bit isolated and maybe minute, but it's like they are believing that it is becoming, and it's going to become a bit more during the summer period. So without a doubt, there is a need and an understanding from all different persons to somehow try to be a part of the solution. Now, I made it very clear to a couple of these guys that I don't know what the ends is, and I don't know what the street is. Do I play a part? Can I be a part of the solution? So I made up a mind, and I said, what I believe is very good, and what should happen is like a vehicle with different wheels. A vehicle with different wheels, if it comes off, but you always put all these vehicles with 6 wheels, 10 wheels, depending on a truck or whatever, for them to work together on a structure. And I believe somehow along the line, and I'm speaking to a couple of guys, that we may have to start to support them in the community, because you got lots of boys out there who are single mothers. One of the guys was talking about trauma. A lot of them are going through some serious trauma as well. So I believe that we will have to do some work, whether it's financial or what, supporting some of these guys who are out there with trying to help some of these young boys and trying to get them off the street. James.
Well, my opinion on all of this is, I'm trying to think of how to say it because it's relatively simple, but it seems like all these things are very complicated. But in my opinion, the real pandemic that fuels everything that we're seeing, and it is this specific incident of men running around parks with swords, or black on black crime, or racism, and the whole thing. There's 2 main vehicles. One is politics and the other is the press, because between the 2 of them, they turn everything into one side versus another side. There's some arguments to be had. There's some group being marginalized by some other group. And all that's going on between politicians and the press is pitting every different type of group of society against each other for one reason or another. And really, if we could make them shut up, more likely community activities can start getting together, because otherwise what you'll have is you'll have a community in, like where I'm from, Sale. We get a community activity going and it's going really, really well, and race relations, for the sake of conversation, are going brilliantly. And then what happens is something happens in some different part of the country, some politician starts using it for their own ends, then the press start making a meal out of it, and you've got the Guardian super left wing, and I wouldn't know, 2 other newspapers having a completely different antagonistic approach to it. And now in Sale, me and my multicolored group of friends can't get along because the hatred of the past that we're getting beyond is being stirred up, and everybody seems to be using everything for their own ends and talking about solutions, but not really coming up with a solution. You know, they talk about solutions like, yeah, we'll throw money at this activity and throw money at that activity. Meanwhile, they're marginalizing some other group to handle the currently upset group. And it's just a constant fueling of one group against another. One group of hatred is being swapped out for the next most fashionable type of hatred. That's my take on it.
Yeah. Well, guys, we're gonna wrap up, but any sort of word, and for ladies and gentlemen, those on YouTube and those on Facebook and whatever, you can share your views. You can catch it up later as well. But in closing, David, your last word. I know you said a lot. What's your last word in regards to this, and especially for community leaders? Some of those guys, Alex Fer and those guys who are taking knives off the street. Some big, massive cutlass and some sword. I don't know where these guys walk with those things, man. How do they carry them?
I have no idea how, but honestly, I think that the thing is, we obviously all want to live, in a peaceful existence. You know, we want to be able to go out and enjoy life. You know, especially in current times. I do think that guys who do carry knives. First of all, I don't condone it. But if, this cannot occur in places like, it can't occur at all, but it can't really occur in parks where you've got kids and old people and all, people who are vulnerable, particularly around. I just cannot condone it at all. And so, as I said with my closing comment earlier, we've got to find a better way of trying to, number one, get the knives off the street, but also identify people who are carrying knives. Because that, for me, is the way forward. I know there's a whole host of other things that we can do and try and throw our hat in. I completely agree with James. Divisiveness obviously just adds fuel to the fire. But I do think people will carry. Unfortunately, it's the world that we live in. How do we get them to stop carrying, or how do we identify them when they are carrying?
Yes. So that stop and search you're talking about at the same time.
Well, a better way, not this indiscriminate stopping and searching of people, because again, that just opens up a kettle of fish. So what I'm saying is technology. Let's use technology in some way, shape, or form. There's got to be good ways that we can use technology. For example, with COVID-19, and this is a long wrapping up session here, but with COVID-19, we've been able to identify people who've got temperature. We have infrared sensors that we can identify people walking in and walking out. Oh, actually, they've got a temperature of 40. Wait, stop there. Where are you going? Have you got a temperature? Oh yeah, I've actually, okay, well, back up. That's what we could easily do. What I'm saying is there a better way that we can use the technology that's out there, or create technology that would identify people who are carrying?
Anthony, based on what David's saying right there, the whole COVID period and the pandemic and the shutdown, the isolation, has taught us that when the government want to really put resources and to make things happen, they can. Even though there are question signs, according to Dominic Cummings, that it was all shifty at the same time. But do you think that there should be some way how is the government failing in partnership with the people, with leaders?
Well, just really to make it really quick, because obviously I know we need to wrap up. I mean, at the end of the day, people should be responsible for their actions, and I mean that in a sort of really, not in a simplistic way, but people need to be responsible for what they do. I mean, people need to have values. If someone's going to pick up a knife when they leave home, they know what they're going to do with that particular piece of apparatus that they're walking around with, right? That implement. So it comes down to the individual, actually, because obviously, I appreciate what David's saying. From a medical perspective, there's technology. You can test someone's temperature. When someone picks up a knife to leave home, you can't detect that. That's someone morally, their values are saying to themselves, I want to go out and carry this and commit a crime or hurt someone. So really, it comes down to the individual. We need to make sure from school days, young children, teach them morals, values, and really really provide really clear education that can maybe help the younger generation not follow down those paths where sadly, some of these youths have gone, which has led them into this area of crime.
Okay, and James, the last shall be the last.
Yeah, I don't know. My view, it's interesting. Recently, I've become much more soppy, for want of a better word. And, I realise that it seems to be like the main solution, going off what Anthony said, start teaching about values and stuff at a younger age, but trying to teach people that it's not even about the consequences or the ramifications, but how much better life is if we appreciate, respect, and love each other.
Yes.
And don't have a desire to go out and hurt somebody. And when you go out, when you really care about somebody, something I've recently realized, the more I'm able to care about people around me, the less fear and apprehension I have about life in general. And it seems to come from, if I care about others, I have less worries about myself.
Yeah.
And because some of these kids, to be fair, and again, I know this is probably a little bit long, you've got some kids going out with knives because they are brutes. You've got other kids who are petrified, so they're taking a knife out in case they need to protect themselves. It's savage.
But I strive for the perfect utopia, is what you're saying there, James. I like that.
Well, at least if we could just care for each other a little bit more, what would a utopian society be? I think that'd be pretty boring. I like a rivalry. I just don't want to kill each other over it.
Okay. Well, we're gonna have some utopian society soon when everybody can go to the pub and drink and go to the parties. And
exactly.
Anthony, we wish your wife happy birthday again. And I know you're going back for the second round of desserts, So tell your wife happy birthday. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for joining those on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. For Instagram, I don't know what happened with the sound earlier, but you can always catch it on Sidburn TV and YouTube as well. And we wish and hope that the youth of this world, the youth of this nation, because I saw some videos again, which is showing some youth from other parts of Africa, and they're like bringing everything to say that, as David said, it's from day one, knife crime has been going on. But one of the things that as parents we want our children to come home to us. And when they go to the park, we want them to be able to come home to us. So that's a situation and parents have to take full responsibility at the same time. That's why you bring the children into the world. Okay? So without further ado, I want to thank you so much. Have a great evening. David, thank you so much for coming on.
No problem.
James, thank you so much. Anthony, thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, have a good night and have a great week. Thank God it's Friday. In the next couple. Thank you, guys. You stay right there, please.
Yeah, we'll do.